Howdy everyone, and welcome back to The More You Grow. As you can see, we're in the greenhouse again. I have a feeling a lot of the videos I'm going to be doing from here on out are going to be in this greenhouse. This is like my new happy place. But let's get on to what we're going to be doing today. I hate to admit it, guys, but I'm late again. I'm always late, it seems like, when it comes to just about everything anymore. I used to not be this way. I used to be right on time, 30 minutes early, everything like that. I used to have everything planned out. But life got to me, and now I'm late to everything. And that includes gardening things, it seems like. Thought I was going to be on top of it this year. I didn't have college to worry about keeping me distracted or keeping me busy to where I could plan things out a little bit better. But as with when I'm going to places, time got away from me. I didn't realize what time of the year it was, even though I knew. I wasn't paying attention, and I'm late. What am I late for? Well, I am late in getting my potatoes out, planted. So, we're going to give it a shot anyways, because for one, these were only a few dollars. It didn't cost me hundreds of dollars or anything, so if we plant these and they don't work out, it's no big deal. It's not going to cost me much. The second thing is I'm not that far off. I'm probably about 3 weeks off from where I wanted to plant these. About give or take 3 weeks. So I'm not terribly off as far as the time, but it's still plenty late. So we're gonna get to it, get these potatoes all cut up, and I'll talk to you a little bit along the way. So let's go check it out. So we have our seed potatoes here. And seed potatoes are going to be different than your store-bought potatoes. For one, these are certified seed potatoes. That means they were tested for diseases, for any kind of pathogens, and so you're going to have a least likely chance of having issues with seed potatoes. And one of the biggest reasons why you want to get certified seed potatoes from either your farm and garden store, we get ours from the feed store here where I live, so wherever you find them, having those seed potatoes are going to be better than anything you get like at the store, anything like that, because a lot of the store-bought potatoes are sprayed not to sprout. It either keeps them from sprouting completely, or it really slows down sprouting, or it reduces sprouting. So even if you say, oh, I've grown potatoes from the store and they sprouted and everything, well, that might be true. They might still sprout, but they might be either weak or they might be really slow to sprout. Whereas if you get seed potatoes, they're going to be a lot quicker and a lot healthier. So whenever you can, always get seed potatoes to plant your new potatoes. So what we need to do now is we need to suberize our potatoes. And what does that mean, suberize? I've done a video on potatoes in the past, and I talked about that a little bit. Suberized is just the fancy horticultural term for scarring over the cuts. We want to cut these to where there's about 2 eyes per section, and that's going to give us a good growth rate. In case if one of these buds were to die, as you can see here, if I had one bud die, I have another eye or bud. I call them buds, but they are the eyes of the potatoes. You'll have one bud to take its place. So it's good to have 2 eyes per section. And so we're going to cut these up and we're going to let these suberize. All it takes is to let them sit in a cool spot, a spot where they're going to stay dry, and let that cut heal over. It's going to create sort of a scar. So all we're going to do right now is we're going to cut our potatoes into our pieces. So kind of look at the potato and see where the buds are going to be at. And you try to strategically cut your pieces to where you get about 2 eyes per piece. If you get 1 on some of them, that's okay. If you get 3 on some of them, that's okay. But it's all about just trying to get the best cut possible. So I think I'm going to cut this one. This one's a little bit different. It's hard to tell where I want to cut this at. So I think I'm going to just cut this one in half. So I think I'm just going to do like that with this one. So I've got a lot of buds on this top one. I've got less buds on this one, but there's about 3 on this piece. So I'm gonna cut this one like so. So I'm gonna finish cutting up these potatoes because I'm horrible about talking and working at the same time. I'm gonna finish cutting these up and I'll talk to you a little bit after I get done. Alright, so we've got all of our potato pieces cut up now. Most of these I just cut in half. There's a few that were so big that I cut them into 3 pieces. Then there are a few that are so small that you're better off just leaving them whole. You could cut this in half, but honestly, I think you're gonna be a lot better off with these little small ones just to leave them whole. So, now that we have them all cut up, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take this box here and we're gonna put them in this box. And for the next 5 to 7 days, we're just gonna let these guys hang out in the box. And while they're in the box, they're going to be healing over. Most people don't realize that potatoes are not roots, they are stems. They are actually modified stems. A tuber is a type of modified stem. My students will be the first ones to tell you that potatoes are stems because we just had a whole lesson about different kinds of stems, modified stems, and some modified stems that we use in our everyday life in cooking, other reasons like that. How we propagate plants using modified stems. And since they are a stem, they have all these little buds all over them. These little buds can become all new plants. So these are a storage tuber. They use them for food storage where plants will take carbohydrates in the form of sugars, convert them into starches, and then when the plant needs it, they will turn these starches back into sugar to be used at that point. So we can take advantage of their little adaptations because we use this as food. We make this our food, and then we can use this to make more plants because since it's a stem, we can use those buds to make all new plants if we cut them into sections. So that's how we're able to cut up potatoes and get many more plants than if we just leave them whole, because each one of these buds can become a new plant as long as you have a little bit of potato attached to it, because that's what these little buds are going to use as their food source until they can start putting out roots. So you want to have a good amount of tuber or potato left on your buds for them to use until they get rooted really well. So back to what I was saying, we're just going to place these in the box and we're going to let them suberize or scar over for about 5 days because I don't want to wait too long now because I've waited way too long honestly to be planting potatoes, but live and learn, and it's all about adventures, right? So I'm going to get these put in the box, and next time you see me, we're going to go plant these out into the field. So I will see y'all in just a little bit in this video. Alrighty folks, it's been about 5 days now, and our potatoes that we cut in the greenhouse are all suberized over, they're scarred over, they're dry to the touch, they're ready to get planted. So I'm going to bring you along, show you how I get these planted, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how I plan to have better success this year with potatoes than I did last year. Talk about some things I'm going to do different. Also, we're going to plant out some more onion sets. I've got some onions planted already, but I bought a few more just because I'm an impulse buyer, and we're going to buy some more, plant them out, and see how they do anyways. So let's get all these planted up, guys. Alrighty folks, the first thing we're going to do before we plant our potatoes is we're going to extend these rows of onions. We've got a few more bunches we're going to plant. Behind me we have 3 rows of 10-15 onions. I love these yellow onions because they're super sweet, easy to grow. They do really well for me here in Texas, so they're always a go-to in the garden. We've got these planted about 2 to 3 inches apart, maybe a little bit more. You want to give your onions plenty of space because as that onion grows, the bulb is going to expand. You want to have enough space between each of your transplants to get those started. And you can grow onions from seed, they just take a lot longer. You have to plant them way earlier, and it's really not effective in my mind because you can buy bunches of transplants from most of your farm and garden stores. These were only, I think, $1.50 a piece, something like that. They weren't expensive at all, and you've got probably, at least 100 probably onions in this. So It's much more cost effective and time effective just to get transplants because they're cheap and you're going to get onions a lot quicker and a lot faster with these transplants. So we have some more 1015 yellow onions, and I also have some Granex white onions, and these are going to be mild white onions because there can be some of those white onions out there that get pretty strong. These do really good for onion rings. They make nice big thick rings for onion rings, other stuff like that. So I thought I'd diversify a little bit and add another bunch of a different kind of onion in here. So let's get these planted in first, then we'll move on to our potatoes. All right, so we've got a lot of onions planted now that go all the way to the end of that tilled row down to here, and we just planted all these just now, about 3 rows of onions down to these stakes. So now that we got those in, let's move on to the potatoes. All right, so once you have your potatoes cut and they're all suberized or scarred over and healed and they're dry to the touch, it's time to plant. The way we plant our potatoes is we'll make a trench or a row about 4 to 5 inches deep. We'll plant these about 4 inches deep. We'll plant them about a foot apart, and you can plant your rows about 3 foot apart from each other. We did ours about 5 foot apart because I'm going to plant some more stuff down the middle between these 2 rows, and I'll talk about that when it comes up in the next video. But when we get these planted, I will show you that, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm going to do different this year for better success. Alrighty guys, so all the onions and potatoes are planted now, so let's talk about what I want to do different this year for better success than I had last year. I think the first thing I'm going to do is work on water situation. So last year it was dry. We were watering with a water hose, which is not efficient at all, and a lot of things just didn't get enough water. So this year I'm going to be putting in drip irrigation. I'm going to be putting it down every one of these rows, and I'll go along with that and make a whole video on how to install drip irrigation when I get to that. But I think that's going to be a big game changer, being able to water things efficiently and not have to spend a full day just watering things and not getting really good results. Because one thing is, with drip irrigation, you're watering right where the plants need it. You're not watering the weeds. That's a big thing with water hose or surface watering, is you're not just watering your plants, you're also watering the weeds. And that comes down to my next big thing that I want to try to do this year, is work on covering the soil. Because last year, weeds took over. Weeds took over everything, choked out most of the plants that we had, and the ones that we did have just were having to compete with weeds the whole time. So this year, definitely going to work on covering the soil. I'm going to get some hay on here and try to put hay over these onions here soon. When the potatoes come up, I'll put hay over them as well. So there's ways of getting hay and mulch to cover the soil without having to go out and buy just a bale of hay for mulch. in my case, I have cows right over there, and they don't always eat all the hay. They will either poop on it, pee on some of it. In some cases, and eventually they just get tired of it and they don't want to eat it. So that hay that's left over, I'm going to take that and cover the surface of the soil. It'd be better if I had straw, because straw is going to have less weeds in it, but I think with the right kind of hay, it's going to be fine. Especially if you keep the soil covered with it, there's not a chance for weeds to come up. That's the big deal, is with bare soil, it's disturbance, and weeds thrive on disturbance. So the more you till, the more you leave the surface uncovered, the more weeds you're going to get. So I think even if I use hay that has a little bit of weed seed in it, it's going to be okay, because we're going to keep the surface covered and it's not going to let a chance for those weeds to. So I'll be doing that in another video, and I'll come back along here and put some mulch around these onions because they're ready to be mulched over. The potatoes, we got to wait for them to come up a little bit, then we'll mulch around them. So that's going to be the big thing. The third thing I'm going to be doing that I didn't do last year is focus on fertilizer. Last year I didn't put any nutrients in the soil, and I think they would have done better if I would have given them a little fertilizer. I always recommend to do a soil test first before you put any fertilizer out. I'm going to go along through here and do a soil test here soon, but I can already tell you I know this land well enough to know that it's going to be deficient in a few things. So I put in some just basic garden fertilizer, some vegetable and tomato fertilizer. I got this down at Walmart, and this is a really good one just because it's not too high. I don't have to worry about it being too high. It's a 12-10-5 mix, so it's going to be really good for vegetables. And I put a little bit of that in, as you saw, between each of my potato pieces. I didn't put it right on top of the potatoes. You don't want it to burn your potatoes as it's growing. So I put it in between a little bit, so that way they have to send their roots out and find it on their own. They have to search out that fertilizer. So I'll probably come in and give the onions a little bit, because onions are heavy feeders. They are ones that like a lot of nitrogen, because most people don't realize the bulb of that onion is not a root. It's actually leaves and a modified stem. So they need lots of nitrogen to make a nice big onion. So always recommend, whenever you start in the spring or before you start your garden in the spring, do a soil test. You can send that off to a lot of your state agencies if you live out of state. If you live here in Texas, you can send that either to Texas A&M Soil Research Lab. You can send it to their soil testing lab, or you can send it to another place. It's in Oklahoma, but it's called the Noble Foundation. Noble Foundation does a great job of soil testing as well. And you can send it to them no matter which state you're in. You can send it to one of these places here in Texas or Oklahoma, but there's going to be a state agency in your state that's going to be closer to send it to. So always recommend check out your local area, find out where you can send off soil test. So in another video, I'll come along and teach you how to take a proper soil test to get a most. So in another video, I'll come along and show you how to take the most accurate soil sample that you can to be sure you get the most accurate results, and everything you need to do for that. But until then, if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you have any more questions for me about planting onions or potatoes, or if you want to let me know in the comments what kinds of onions and potatoes are you going to plant this year, if you're going to plant any, and how are you going to plant them if you have a different method than me. And until then, if you until then, if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you have any more questions for me about how to plant onions or potatoes, leave it down in the comments, and also tell me what kinds of onions and potatoes are you going to plant. And if you have a different method than me, I'd love to hear about it. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel, go check us out on Facebook and Instagram, and hit that bell icon for notifications. And until next time, I hope you'll join me right here on The More You Grow.